All right, welcome back, IT professionals. Let's just dive right in. This explainer is your definitive end-of-course review for the massive 10-part tutorial IPv6 Transition, Scaling the Modern Global Network, an introduction for the IT professional. This whole series was put together by Virtualization Options LLC, which is this fantastic Colorado-based technology research and education group. And look, if you've been following along with us, you already know that moving from IPv4 to IPv6 isn't just some simple software update. It is a massive structural shift. And while it's intended for IT folks with a solid networking baseline, understanding this shift is absolutely crucial for your entire IT staff. I mean, literally every single device on your network is going to be impacted by this. So let's get into it.
But first, seriously, a huge congratulations to you for completing the course. I really want to commend you for tackling this. Untangling decades of legacy networking habits to learn the ins and outs of IPv6, yeah, that is no small feat. Closing this specific knowledge gap is a huge win, not just for your own career trajectory, but for the future stability and scalability of your organization's networks. You put in the hard work across all 10 chapters, and honestly, you should be super proud.
So think of this explainer as our milestone sprint. We're going to take all that hard work you did and synthesize it into 6 core actionable buckets. We'll quickly recap the IPv4 foundation, look at the IPv4 header bottleneck, move on to IPv6 addressing and headers, cover the core IPv6 transition strategies, dive into translation with 464 XLAT, and finally, planning your IPv6 deployment.
Okay, milestone 1, course complete, IPv4 foundation. Because before we can completely embrace the future, we really need to understand the legacy protocol that built the internet as we know it today. Think back to 1981. RFC 791 gave birth to IPv4. And the wild thing here is that it was originally designed as this simple packet switch protocol for a tiny academic research network. Nobody was planning for a commercial, planet-scale internet. So as it exploded to billions of devices, we had to start inventing stopgaps. Enter CIDR in 1993, which replaced those rigid class-based IP assignments just to buy us a little more time. But, duct tape only holds for so long. By 2011, the global IPv4 address pool was officially entirely depleted.
And the whole bottleneck basically boils down to this one exact number: 4,294,967,296. That is the absolute maximum number of unique 32-bit addresses you can squeeze out of IPv4. Now, back in the early 80s, 4 billion addresses sounded like infinity, right? Nobody was picturing everybody walking around with smartphones or smartwatches or massive cloud computing environments. But today, that rigid mathematical limit is exactly why we've run out of space, and it's exactly why your transition to IPv6 is no longer optional.
Moving right into our second milestone, the IPv4 header bottleneck. Let's take a look at the technical debt and the actual performance toll all those legacy workarounds are costing us.
This really builds the business case for migrating. See, the old IPv4 header is variable in length. It fluctuates anywhere from 20 to 60 bytes. And that variability means every single router along a packet's path literally has to pause, parse the header options, and recalculate the checksum. It's kind of like stopping to pay at every single toll booth on a highway. It's wildly inefficient. Now contrast that with the IPv6 header. It's a streamlined, fixed 40 bytes every single time. There are no variable options in the base header and no per-hop checksum recalculation. It's just a massive performance upgrade that lets routers forward packets at raw hardware speeds at an incredible scale.
But the header isn't even the biggest bottleneck. We have to talk about NAT, or Network Address Translation. Taking an entire 500-person office and masking them behind one single public IP address using NAT, that is a massive IT time sink. Those NAT state tables chew up memory and CPU like crazy. And worse, it completely breaks the internet's original design principle of true end-to-end connectivity. It forces us to use these really clunky application layer gateway workarounds just to get peer-to-peer or VoIP apps to function properly. NAT is not a permanent solution, guys. It's just a really expensive Band-Aid.
So, let's leave the Band-Aids behind. Milestone 3, IPv6 addressing and headers. We're diving into the solution phase now to look at IPv6's brilliant architecture.
Throughout your day-to-day IPv6 journey, these 3 core addresses are going to show up constantly in your docs, in your packet captures. Being able to spot them instantly is basically a superpower for an IT pro. First, you have the :1. That's your loopback, doing exactly the same job as 127.0.0.1 did in IPv4.
Then you have the double colon on its own, which simply means unspecified, and it's used before an address is officially assigned. Finally, you've got the IPv4 mapped address, which starts with double colon FFF. Your dual-stack operating systems use this one internally all the time. Seriously, burn these into your memory. They're going to save you hours of troubleshooting down the line.
Another really brilliant design choice in IPv6 is how it handles packet sizes. It establishes a hard, reliable floor, a minimum-maximum transmission unit, or MTU, of 1280 bytes across all links. But more importantly, it totally shifts the complexity away from the network core and pushes it out to the endpoints. Routers don't fragment packets anymore. The whole system relies entirely on path MTU discovery and source-only fragmentation. So if a packet arrives and is just too big, the router just drops it and essentially tells the source host, hey, figure this out and chop it up yourself before you send it. It lifts a huge processing burden right off your core network hardware.
Moving right along to milestone 4, Core IPv6 Transition Strategies. Now we're getting into the strategy phase, mapping out exactly how we make this jump to modern infrastructure.
You essentially have three main tools in your belt here. First up is dual stack, which simply means running both IPv4 and IPv6 side by side simultaneously. This is by far the cleanest approach, there's no translation needed, and you get full native performance on both protocols. Next is tunneling. This is literally wrapping your IPv6 traffic inside an IPv4 packet so it can cross legacy infrastructure. Think of it like a bridge connecting two IPv6 islands. And finally, there's translation, where a gateway actively converts between the two protocols on the fly when one side simply can't speak to the other.
And speaking of translation, let's hit milestone 5, translation with 464 XLAT. This was the heavy hitter in the course, and for a very good reason.
The coolest thing about 464XLAT is just how incredibly elegant it is. It's a mechanism that lets your legacy IPv4 apps run completely transparently over a pure IPv6 network. It does this using a client-side translator, called a CLAT, sitting right on the device, and a provider-side NAT64 gateway, called a PLAT, sitting at the edge. So the app itself totally thinks it's riding on an IPv4 network, but underneath, the carrier is running pure, simplified IPv6. This completely eliminates the need for carrier-grade NAT, it restores real, routable addresses to each device, and it serves as this vital, highly scalable blueprint for enterprise networks. It is literally the ultimate bridge to the future. Which brings us to our final milestone, planning your IPv6 deployment. Time to take you from student to practitioner with the definitive action plan.
Okay, here is your exact roadmap for deployment. Step 1. Confirm your ISP prefix delegation. And listen closely to this part. Request a /48 prefix for your organization. Do not let them talk you into a smaller /60. You will absolutely regret the lack of subnetting flexibility later on. Step 2. Build out your addressing plan on paper. Map out your sites, map out your VLANs, and do all of this before you touch a single router. And finally, Step 3. Train your team. You have to make sure everyone actually understands IPv6 addressing and dual-stack operations before you go making any changes in a production environment.
I really want to leave you with this powerful quote from the tutorial. Every year of delay is another year of technical debt. Because this transition, it isn't just coming, it's already here. Just consider the scale for a second. 45% of all Google's traffic and 95% of T-Mobile's entire network are already running natively on IPv6 right now. The major content delivery networks have already defaulted to it. So the longer you wait, the harder, and honestly, the more expensive those old IPv4 band-aids are going to become.
Your users and your providers are already on IPv6. The big question is your network ready to catch up? Remember, your ultimate goal here is to build an IPv6 in native infrastructure where IP4 is just treated as a legacy compatibility layer, not the core foundation. You've got the knowledge from the Virtualization Options LSC course, you've got the strategies, and you have the roadmap. The next step is entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, best of luck with your IPv6 deployment.